Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So for step 4 T&D today, we have some Dead People tea. This, honestly, it might be my favorite mug. I've had it for longer than a lot of the other ones that you actually see on this show, and I love it. I love Caduceus. He's probably my favorite. No, he's definitely my favorite Critical Role character. He might be one of my favorite D&D characters ever. But he's amazing. Inside of it, we have some Monk's Blend tea from Beantown. Again, this one is pretty like deep and hefty. Hefty, I guess, is the flavor profile we're gonna go with today for describing that. It's really good. I like it a lot, and I think that I discovered it. Not I think that I discovered it. I know that I discovered it sort of at random on the internet one day. But I think that more people should try it because it is very, very good. So, with that out of the way, let's get into what we are actually talking about today. Today, we are going to be talking about something that bugs me a little bit in 5th edition. And it's something kind of strange, and it's something that there is an easy solution to. But we're going to be talking about hit dice today. Okay? Hit dice. And it's not that they exist. I think that they're a phenomenal mechanic. I think that they work really well. I think that with the way that Wizards has designed, combat and encounters in 5th edition, hit dice are actually a phenomenal resource to, like, sort of supplement the characters throughout the adventuring day. I think the Wizards went a little overboard on saying encounters throughout the day, but that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. So it's not the fact that, like, hit dice are to be used at a short rest to regain some health. For me, it is the fact that that is their only purpose. Like, you get more hit dice every level, you get them based on what class you're in, etc., etc. But hit dice are exclusively used to heal yourself at a short rest. Unless there is something that I am not thinking of right now, the fact that that is the only time that hit dice are actually used in the game, it bugs me. It bugs me on the inside. I've actually talked about this several times with other people that play a lot of D&D, and a lot of people that write, like, particularly homebrew stuff. I don't know anybody that writes, like, full-blown, D&D content. That'd be really cool. I would love to have friends in the industry because I think it'd just be cool then. But not the point. The fact that hit dice exist solely to heal you during a short rest. Again, I think they are invaluable resources during those short rests, but the fact that they are exclusively limited to those short rests is what bothers me. I don't like that part of it. I want them to be useful other places too, because there's something you have to keep track of. There's something you have to actually pay attention to, because you don't just, like, magically get them all back when you finish a long rest. You get half of them back when you finish a long rest. Like, it's the fact that you don't get, they don't just automatically reset, so they require you to actually track them separately across multiple adventuring days sometimes. So let's talk about, like, ways to fix that and stuff like that. But first, just let me know, please, if I'm insane for thinking this, that I am the only person in the world who really hates that hit dice are exclusively used on short rests, because I don't think it's crazy, and people I've talked to have either been humoring me or agree with me. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was the first one, but I really hope it is just the second one. And so let's talk it through a little bit here. Let's talk it out. So this is an issue that I have had since I pretty much since I started running games, and I realized that, like, hit dice are useless except for when you have to use them. Like, other things you have to track, like, I don't know, spell slots or hit points, or, superiority dice, etc. Those are all useful in a lot of different situations, not necessarily exclusively when you are required to use them. And so it's just things that you have to keep track of actively a lot of the time that aren't useful in more than one way feel like a waste to me. And so I like to come up with ways to use them a little bit more readily in my games, and I'm going to tell you guys about a couple of them now. So if you have been a patron of mine or have stuck around from my Patreon for a while, or even have seen some of the things I've done like way back on TikTok a while ago, I like to write in stuff that utilizes hit dice into subclasses or magic items that I create, because I think that they're a resource that should be utilized more often. Yes, it's another thing to track, but if you're either not taking short rests in the middle of the day, so you're just not using them, or you have to track them anyway, so you might as well make them useful. So I like to do things, I like to write things that utilize hit dice in different ways to do different kinds of things. I talked last week on Thursday, actually, because Grim Hollow has the School of Sangromancy. I think that's what it was called. I'm pretty sure that's right. In their player's guide, which I love as a subclass, and I talked about how much I like the fact that it used hit dice as a, like, expendable resource. I really, really love that. And so I like to try and do similar things to that. Honestly, if you are one of my patrons, and there might even be one or two of them that are public on Patreon, if you go back a ways into when I was publishing just homebrew stuff, there are a couple of things in there that specifically utilize hit dice in different ways. So a good example that I can think of sort of offhand is obviously let's do two examples of items that people will have encountered if they consume D&D media from like the show perspective. Like if you watch D&D shows or consume D&D shows, you may have run into these two. The first one, in a positive way, is NADPOD. If you have listened to the first season of NADPOD, this isn't really a spoiler, so don't worry about that. The second one is a little bit more of a spoiler. But the first one, if you have listened to the first season of NADPOD, you know that Beverly Togold V, played by Caldwell Tanner, has an amulet that allows, as a bonus action on their turn, an ally to look at the amulet and immediately expend up to half of their hit dice to regain that many hit points, usable once between short rests, I believe, is what it actually shakes out to. And this was really great because they did not have somebody who, I'm not even going to say was designated, quote-unquote, as a healer, because obviously Bev, as a paladin, could heal people. Hard One had Second Wind to give himself some hit points back, and Moonshine was a druid and had the ability to cast spells anyway. But having that amulet there was something they could do as a bonus action on their turn to give themselves an actual amount of hit points back that really sort of like supplemented their current active style of play. Obviously, up to half of your hit dice, meaning you can regain potentially, half or more of your hit points. That's a lot. That is obviously very much. That is kind of insane to, throw at them. But they were a 3-person party without somebody who was designated as a healer, and so they weren't going to be able to really heal themselves up quite as easily. But it was something that actively utilized hit dice in a way that made it worthwhile for them to actually sort of track those. And it might be that, like, in very small parties, you take a lot more short rests than in very big parties, but it just seems like that was something that they did, and a lot of parties just sort of look at short rests as like we'll figure it out kind of way. At least that's what most of my parties do. And it seems like most of my friends who run games parties do the same. But the other one, and this one is a spoiler for Critical Role Campaign 2, so if you don't want to hear that, go ahead and skip forward about 30 seconds starting now. In Critical Role Campaign 2, Knot gets a dagger that is a cursed magic item, and that cursed magic item actually, like, sucks away vitality whenever she was healed. Whenever Sam got healed by a member of the party, he had to burn one of his hit dice in order to actually receive the healing, and if he did not do that, then he would just die, which is crazy, but that's a cool way to use hit dice as well. So welcome back to the people who, went away from that spoiler. So if you did listen to it, that is a way to use hit dice in a negative fashion that I really, really do enjoy. I think that that was a really creative way for them to utilize hit dice, and I would love to see items or subclasses or, you know, effects of some sort actually burn through hit dice, either in a positive or negative way, published by Wizards, so that you don't look at it and go, ooh, man, that's way overpowered. Because you can do that with pretty much anything that you look at. Even if somebody has spent, like, months and years playtesting and balancing something, somebody's going to look at it and go, ooh, that's really overpowered. And that's just how it goes sometimes. So, to give an example, again, what we talked about there were item-based hit dice usages. If you do pick up or do look into the Grim Hollow, I'm pointing this way because it's through like 4 walls, but it's that direction on a shelf for me. The School of Sangromancy wizard from Grim Hollow is a wonderful, wonderful, like, idea. The Sangromancy spells as a whole, utilizing hit dice as part of the casting of spells, and then being super taxing for everybody that is not a Sangromancer wizard. That is a genius idea. I think it's phenomenal. Obviously, you can't cast that many of them because they burn through your pool of resources very, very quickly. But I think it's a really, really awesome way to do it. I have created subclasses. Most of what I've written are subclasses. But I have gone ahead and I have written subclasses where you can use your hit dice, or you can burn other people's hit dice to heal them or heal yourself, or whatever it is. I think the one that comes to mind for me is I did a medic rogue subclass that I still need to go back and tweak a little bit, even though I'm not like actively publishing this stuff anymore. Who could, as an action twice between long rests, go to a creature that had died within the last minute, and the feature is called Resuscitate. It was the level 17 feature, and they could essentially bring them back to life, and they could spend I can't remember what the limit was, but a certain number of hit dice that the other creatures to heal that creature up to a roll of those hit dice. So you're not going to get, you know, all of your health back from being resuscitated, but you're not going to be stuck sitting there at 1 for a feature that, you know, it requires you to get all the way up to the top levels in Rogue in order to use. So that is one that I really had a good time thinking about. Most of what I have done in terms of utilizing hit dice has been in the quote-unquote positive direction, where, like, as things or as I've been writing subclasses or something like that, if I'm writing a healer in particular, because I think that there should be at least one healer subclass for every single class, so that you can play a healer in any class, because oftentimes people will look at it and go, man, I just don't want to play a cleric. I don't mind being the support healer build, but I don't want to be the cleric. Which is why I wrote, like, that rogue subclass. I think I wrote a barbarian one as well. There's a monk one. There's plenty of them, obviously. But I think there should be one for each class. But so I was writing that one, and I was like, well, he's not going to... This subclass is not going to have access to magic. Like, there's no reason to give them access to magic to do this, because the idea is that they are not utilizing magic. They are being a medic. Like, they are there to sustain life in, like, physical ways. So hit dice became a resource that I could look at and go, okay, we can actually work with this. This is something we can actually work with. And so I have utilized those in those ways to help build something like that pretty well. If you look at, again, jumping back to NADPOD, if you look at that amulet and you have a party that doesn't have a designated healer in it, something like that allows players to immediately expend a number of their hit dice a number of times between short rests is a good way to actively keep fights and battles going and keep pacing moving without, you know, requiring essentially somebody to be a healer or have the party have a bag filled with potions, because potions are expensive if you use the list prices as written on, you know, D&D dot the internet. I don't really know where I was going with that. That one fell apart on me. But so, just coming up with ways to use hit dice as a resource is important, I think. My good friend Brooklyn Tuesday has created this monster that if a creature does, I don't remember exactly what it is, but does something within a certain range of it, it has to also burn a certain number of its hit dice and then heals the creature that much. So you don't want to get caught doing whatever that was, because then you're going to be burning hit dice, and if you run out of hit dice, I think you just die or something like that. It's a high level creature. So it's one of those things where it can be used against the players very effectively as well, because it can be used as a timer for the players, because if they are level 15, they have 15 hit dice. And if you have something that drains those hit dice, they can just die. It's kind of like exhaustion, where like if you hit 6, you're dead. No questions about it. But I think that is everything that I want to talk about with regard to hit dice. Just needed to talk it out a little bit, express my frustration with what seems like an otherwise kind of superfluous as a resource that you don't really need to have to track, because it's just more work. It's just more work, honestly. It really is. But let's move on to what shows we have today, because it is Tuesday, which means we do have a certain set of shows here to talk about. We have Diary of a Dragon Pit, Star Wars First Resistance, Dungeons and Daddies, Bombarded, Heckva D&D, Glass Cannon, and The Queer Questers. Go check them out, please, 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 and let them know that I'm the one that sent you, because, again, at some point, somebody's going to say something, and I'm going to think it's going to be funny. I'm going to think it's funny. Not I'm going to think it's going to be funny. I think it's going to be funny right now, but I'm going to think it's funny in the future. So, yeah. Yeah, I think that's everything that I actually want to cover today. So, with all that said, thank you guys so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you are interested in becoming a patron, please check out the link in the description of this episode. And if you are one of my patrons, go check out Patreon if you haven't voted this week already in what we want Friday's episode to be. So, and the next suggestion box is open. So if you have suggestions for this show, go ahead, run over to my Patreon, drop them in the suggestion box. I love getting to hear them, and honestly, I like getting to the episodes that you guys want to actually hear, because it feels better to me to do it that way. So, again, with all that said, thank you guys so very much, and don't forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.